Hi everyone, welcome to today's session. As part of this session, we'll start with the introduction to BW, and also once we just a little bit of introduction to BW or in general introduction to SAP, we'll just go about and see a couple of the high level architecture of the BW or how the flow diagram look like. Okay, like starting from the entry point till the reporting, how exactly the things looks like, we'll start seeing it. So, as you're aware, the SAP BW stand for Business Information Warehouse, wherein you guys will have, uh, as the name indicate, warehouse is nothing but what? It is something which is going to hold some set of things. In our case, it's a data, it's a business data. Okay. So, again, when you talk about any programming language or any software, right? Uh, Nothing came on the fly, right? So SAP come up with initially their own initial version of the ERP software called SAP R3. Then it has come up with something called the BW and so on. Okay. So as you're aware, SAP itself has incorporates it started its own company somewhere in the late 80s, and it emerged as one of the very big software ERP provider. So this is about me anyhow, you guys already aware of me. So let us go and see. Okay. So there are something called OLAP system and OLTP system. Okay. So I believe you guys are aware. You have any idea what exactly is OLAP and OLTP?
One is like for transactional processing we use to store the data,
Correct.
whereas one is for analytical when we want to analyze, do it for
Correct. If you
decision
take an
making.
example of Amazon, I believe I have already told since Nupur was not there. Just to correlate, take any uh, application which you are using or shopping e-commerce website which you are using, right? Whatever we as an end user interacting, right? That is an OLTP system because we are posting some transaction to that, either placing an order or buying an some item or creating an invoice, creating an account, all those things. Okay, that particular system because it has to have a very good responsiveness, it has to be very fast, right? So for that reason, we will go with OLTP system. Whereas there is something called OLAP system that is used mainly for your analytical purpose, such as reporting and other stuffs. Clear? So SAP initially had only ECC system, or initially it is not ECC. The older version of that was calling as SAP R3 4.6C. R3 is because three-layer architecture: database layer, application layer, and presentation layer, right? So if you have read a little bit overview about SAP in your initial days, you might have got to know SAP has its own things like application software, all those things, right? Layers, different layers. So that system was a transactional system. Even simple reporting was happening on that. But later, what SAP come up, obviously as a business, I am investing money and I want faster reporting as an higher management, right? And they try to create over here, and it has its own limitation. Like an ABAP report cannot run more than 10 minutes, or whatever the maximum limit set by the base system during while configuring the system, right? And also when they're running huge amount of processing, what happens? It will impact your overall experience to the end user who is posting the data, right? That's the reason they come up with something called BW system, and obviously it's a revenue model, right? Ultimately, if you think about anything, uh, I come up with new system as a SAP, and I went back to my customer saying like, you know what, I come up with something called BW system or warehouse system. You this particular system is optimized for reporting purpose. What we do, we have provided a mechanism in which we will pull data from source system to BW. Source can be ECC, CRM, SRM, or flat file or non-SAP system. You'll push data to BW, and this is completely optimized for your reporting, and it won't impact your transactional system. Got it? So that's how SAP marketed, and they got a business. Obviously, everybody wants smoother experience to end users, and they wanted to have more and more billing, right? Or more and more business happening. Because assume that on last day you're filing an ITR, right? Like that, assume that there's a sale happening in Amazon, and though there are a lot of inventory, but if the end user is not able to place an order because they are doing some batch processing on their transactional data, ultimately they are losing their revenue, right? That's the reason there's something called BW system, which is not going to impact any of their transactional system, but we will do better reporting, better projection, even the planning and other things. It has given its own additional features. Any doubts why SAP come up with BW system, guys?
No.
Great. So this is OLAP and OLTP. So if you go back, as part of the fundamental session, what we'll be seeing introduction to OLAP and OLTP, which we have done, overview of BW system kind of done. It is not completely done. Obviously, we have to understand the entire architecture. Now, the need of SAP BW system, okay? And obviously, the need of SAP BW system, you got to know SAP BW has its own advantages. It is keeping a part of your the data loads and other things and reporting. Huge amount of reporting can be done on your like last 10 years or 20 years. You can process billions of record, and it has its own separate memory and all, right? Obviously, it has its own advantages. So for our BW system, the source system can be anything. BW is just like a warehouse, but again, you can do reporting on top of that also, right? If you don't want to do the processing of the data, even you just bring the data from some third-party system, either it can be SAP or non-SAP, SRM, like you have ECC, CSV can be from non-SAP system. You load it to BW and you can do reporting on top of that, correct? The source can be anything because it's a warehouse. Warehouse can hold different types of item, right? Like here we can hold different types of data coming from different types of source itself. Clear?
It can be SQL as well, like databases
It
as
can be
well.
anything. It can be anything.
Okay.
For SQL and all, again, we have to see is there any connection which we can make it out. Generally,
Mhm.
SQL also, now it is like with a BW on HANA or a HANA, you can take create a direct connection to your SQL server or database. Whereas earlier, you have to export SQL data as a flat file or something, and then you have to import it here or load it here. Clear?
Okay.
Now again with BW on HANA, you don't have to typically extract the data. You can also create a virtual table in which you can directly access data from the SQL database directly in your HANA. You don't have to physically bring the data. During the runtime, you can run and get the data or
Yeah.
do the reporting. Obviously, there will be bit latency. Like obviously, it has to go literally to the uh, source database and bring the data. If you hold it
Mhm.
here, obviously it will be a bit faster, but again, you won't see that much latency or the delay because nowadays the technology is so fast and there will be something called buffer cache, all those things, right? That will take care. If at all you have accessed the data recently, it may hold data based on the setting for last 10 days or 1 week or 1 month or last in first out like that as and when you are accessing new data, old data will be moved out of the buffer, something like that. Okay, everything will be taken care by HANA architecture. So that's the reason we need to also see a little bit of HANA architecture, how the compression happens and other stuffs. Clear? So any other doubts, Sanjay and Shadab?
Yeah, no, no, Venu. Fine.
Great. Maybe first few session or 2 3 session you might see bit of PPTs, but we will also see the things. But ultimately you need to have a bigger picture. Without bigger picture, it won't be that effective to go into the individual component. Okay. So
Correct.
let us see. Let us try to avoid as much theory as possible, but to lay that baseline, right? We need that theory, so we will have that. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, yes, I mean, I don't have an issue with the theory because I need to understand this. So, uh, I still didn't get clear if we have to connect with a SQL in BW, is it possible or it's not? Like I
No,
have SQL
yeah,
Server
now
or
with the BW on
Oracle.
HANA and all, you can connect it, but earlier it was like you need to go with when we go and see the source system, right? We'll see there will be some additional add-ins you have to install, you have to configure the system. Okay, if you can establish the source system connection, you can do that. But with the
Mhm.
SQL and all on new HANA database, or if the BW is on HANA, now it is directly supporting. Earlier and all, you have to export the table content as a CSV or
Mhm.
your tab separated file, then you have to
Mhm.
import it non-SAP data. Okay.
Like yeah, because what I mean heard earlier in the BW systems are like it supports both SAP and non-SAP data.
Yes,
So
non-SAP is the
non-SAP
CSV
means
data.
this
CSV
S.
are flat file,
Oh,
local files.
okay, not the SQL Server and the Oracle.
No, directly it was not supporting.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
as I said, you don't have to
Hmm.
literally pull the data and store it physically. Okay. Now the
Hmm.
technology is advanced such to an extent, you can
Hmm.
create a source system connection and you can access data which is present in the SQL database remotely, and you can build the model. You can
Okay.
create a virtual table. When you try to see the data of that virtual table, the control will typically go to the source. It can be SQL or any other database, and it will show you the data.
Hmm. So, I mean, I just wanted to know, like in SAP BW and HANA,
Yeah.
are there any restrictions like, or it's because nowadays we are connecting with the big data, Hadoop,
There's no
and there are
restriction. That's the
there is-
reason. There are things are evolving. There is some concept called SDA, which SAP come up last 1.5 to 2 years back, and you might have heard something like SLT,
yes,
System
I
Landscape
heard.
Transformation, SLT keyword that is used to replicate data in real time. Okay. So
Okay.
now the SLT is going to decommission. They are coming up with something called SDI or SDA, Smart Data
Mhm.
Integration or Smart Data Access. That will give you
Mhm.
the capability to the real-time replication of the data and store it physically, or you can also create just a virtual table. What is virtual table? It will just act like a projection or view. I believe Universe also hold the data, right? Universe, you will be designing to model or merge the data from different sources, right? Or Universe is going to store the data. It's a question.
It refers to the tables, like
It won't
whatever
physically
data.
store the data, right? When you
No, no, no. It
when you
won't
run the
physical
BO
store.
report on top of the universe based on the universe design, whatever the joint condition, it will merge the data from the base tables, correct?
Correct.
So like that, assume that the base table you think like it is present in SQL database. Now you are trying to create a HANA calculation view based on the virtual table. Virtual table you can correlate with your the
Universe.
universe. And HANA calculation view, you can correlate to report. When you run the report, you are not physically storing the data in HANA database. You are just having a virtual table, which is like your universe. It will typically pass the control back to source database and bring the data and present it to you in the report. Clear? So any doubts in that, guys?
Sorry, I'm
No worries.
still not
As
clear.
we
Like,
go on, you will
yeah,
understand
yeah.
because
Sure,
see
sure.
that question is like you wanted to understand how exactly all the source system get connected to BW, but obviously in 10 minutes
Yeah.
you cannot able to understand, right?
Yes,
Let's
yes.
go with the flow.
Right.
Obviously, as the time
Sure,
pass on, you will have more
sure.
clarity. Okay. Just
Right.
as of now, you just think that ECC is one of the world TP. It is one of the source
Mhm.
system which BW support, and for another other SAP system also it support. But for non-SAP, initially we were having only CSV. We just go understand that. Okay.
Sure.
So then, obviously, we are talking about BW on HANA or BW on non-HANA database, correct? Prior last 10 years back, we didn't had HANA database itself. Obviously, our BW was running on different database called MySQL, Oracle, DB2, and all the other stuffs. Okay. Non-SAP database, whatever the database which was present in that time, obviously what the client has to do, they have to pay for the database. For example, you are using Oracle database means you have to take your Oracle disk or a database with a license of how much space you are going to consume, correct? Though you have hardware your own, you have to pay for even software also, right? Those are proprietary things. So you have to have your dedicated Oracle DB team to manage their database, install the database, manage the database, admin the database, do like housekeeping activity and all. And on top of that, you will purchase SAP license, right? And you will get SAP hardware or server, and you will connect. You will install your SAP BW or ECC, and at the same time, you will connect to your backend database, which might be Oracle or any other database, correct? So, and you will do the modeling. Here you used to pay for SAP and also to your database provider separately, obviously based on the license. Whereas now, predominantly SAP acquired, there was a company called Sybase. Again, that was also working on kind of columnar database. Now SAP come up with their own proprietary database called BWonHANA. So, your all the SAP system will run HANA database or even non-HANA database, the old one. But slowly SAP is stopping supporting the system which are running on non-HANA database. Okay. They have already given an heads up to their clients or the customers of SAP that after this particular year, I won't be supporting if at all your system is going to run on this because my support license or agreement will end. And if there is any, they can still run, but if there is any issue comes in the standard program and all, they're not going to release any OSS notes or the patches for that or solution for that. Clear?
Yes,
And
sir.
again, SAP can't say like I am going to stop supporting next year itself because obviously as a customer which I am consuming SAP and I have paid SAP right from my pocket. Obviously, there will be a terms and agreement, right? For next 5 years, next 7 years, SAP has given an heads up even 2010 only by 2022 or 2020 only they are 2025 sorry 2025 they are going to stop all the support to non-HANA databases. Okay, at least 10 years advance notice they have given to their customers. So ultimately, I as a SAP company are ensuring all my clients are going to migrate to HANA database slowly. And again, I cannot impose it because obviously I have to showcase what are the advantages of HANA, right? What is the benefit which client get when they move. For that matter, any product which I, as a product company, come up with, have to give some benefit or the advantages to the the company which purchasing my software, right? So that's what they're going to show. They have showed. That's the reason slowly most of the companies are already migrated to HANA, or some companies are still in the process because maybe their not data is not that big, or else they may not have any much need to migrate because they are of the financial constraint, or they are happy with what they have because they are small companies. Correct?
So, what are the advantages? Means, as you said, like we need to tell the client, okay, these are the
We'll
advantages,
see
and
when we go
many
to
of them
HANA.
are using.
Yes, we'll see when we go to the actual see like overview of HANA. As of now, we are just focusing mainly on overview of BW. Okay.
Okay.
So obviously, like data loading and other things. See, if we talk about advantages, obviously you need to know what are the limitation. Correct? To know the limitation, you need to
Correct.
know at least high level of what exactly is overall BW is all about. Correct? What are the processes are happening? Then I can
Mm-hmm.
say like this process will have complete faster, or this is where you will get advantages. Right? Now it is just like comparison of BW on non-HANA database, HANA database. We are just trying to feel the flavor of BW. That's it. Okay. But we'll see in detail of what are the advantages and all. It is there in our upcoming sessions. Okay. So
Yeah.
this is the overall BW. If you understand this, you can speak at least in front of anybody, even if they are aware of BW, very well. Okay. So this particular slide will tell you entire thing about your BW system. Okay. So what it is, there is something called OLTP system, which is a source system, correct? And there is something called BW, which is OLAP system. And obviously in your landscape, you have both ECC and BW. Okay. So in source system, you have a tables, obviously wherein your the application data is stored. For example, purchase order information, invoice information, or delivery information, or master data like customer master data, vendor master data, all those things. Okay. So that data ultimately you have to see in the BEX report followed by your BO report, such as maybe your analysis for office, right? So this is the source application data. Ultimately, the business want to see it as a report output. So in between, you have to do many things that is predominantly called as modeling. Okay, to bring the data from your source table all the way up to your reporting. And in between, you will be merging the data, you will be doing the forecasting, or else you will be creating some calculated columns such as KPIs and all. And ultimately, you will present it as a BEX, and further BEX can be used as it is, or that can be further used by a wrapper reporting tool like BO, Click, Tableau. It can be anything. Clear? So now to bring this data from your tables to BEX, there is many things needs to be done. Let us see what all those. So, any doubts so far, guys?
No, nothing from my side.
Others, you guys are good? Sanjay and Shadab.
Yes, Renu. So I meant to say like the purchase order details or any
Any
master
data, any
tables.
transactional data or master data will be there in ECC or source system.
So ECC is again based on some different database, right?
Yes, it can be on HANA or non-HANA also, anything.
Okay.
Ultimately, data will be stored in some kind of database. So it can be HANA, non-HANA, it can be SQL, it can be flat file. So here we are
Mhm.
considering as a ECC, which is SAP. Predominantly, most of the people will go for BW when they have ECC as a one of their primary system, correct?
Correct.
So your data is there in tables, okay? So, and you have to do the reporting. In between, we have to do the modeling. Let us see each of the component. To bring this data in your application table to BW, we have to create something called extractor or data source, okay? These are some object you will do modeling based on the tables. This extractor or data source, both are one and the same. Either you can coin with the name extractor or a data source. These are just an object or a program you can also correlate. So these are just an object which will be built based on a table. Either you might be building a data source. Let's not go in detail. Let us understand only at high level. I will build data source based on a tables or data from the tables. I'll mix and match the table content. I will generate a data source. Once I create a data source, to bring that data source from ECC or source system to BW, I have to replicate the data source. Okay. Whatever data source I create in the source system, right, I will create a RFC connection. What is RFC? Remote function call. You might have heard RFC, right, since you're into SAP. They will create a bridge between one system to another system, the communication path. Okay, that will be done by basis team. Once that is done, we will be replicating whatever the object which we create, right, the data source as extractor to BW. Understood, guys? So once we replicate that data, okay, the structure will be available. Okay, once we replicate this object, right, the structure will be available. Like what are the different column which I am going to extract from source system to BW. Then, based on this structure, I will also load the data. For example, you are bringing three tables data. You have three structure. You replicate that table data source here. The structure will be available. Okay, and to bring the data from here to here, again you have to create something called info package that we will see in detail how to extract the data. Now, just think if you have three tables, based on three tables, you created a three different extractor and that you replicated to BW. That three extractors are there. It is just a entry point. Okay. Then I have to store this data in some info providers. Info providers you can just correlate like different types of tables. Okay. Ultimately in BW also you need some tables wherein you can load the data which you are bringing from source system, and also there can be reporting is possible on your info provider. Okay, that's the reason we call it as info provider. It is going to provide data to your reporting. Clear?
Okay.
So it is just a provider. You can correlate in a layman terms different types of table. We will see what are different types of info provider possible in BW. But just remember the name info provider. And again, you will load data from here to here, here to here, here to here. And then you will be creating one more level of info provider. Maybe you might have to join the data of two different info provider into a single info provider, like joining based on some keys or populating some data. Clear? You have different table. Based on that, you are going to do the modeling in BW itself to generate some different types of data. Got it? Assume that you have customer master data and you have purchase order information. You're going to link customer master data along with purchase order information in one more provider so that this will give ready-made information. Got it? For the reporting.
Okay.
And on top of that, you might have one more level of info provider also when you are merging customer master data with the purchase order information, and then assume that this is coming from one region, Asia region, and you might also get a data from EC system of different region also, correct? Assume that you have getting data from Asia region and America region. Okay, you have two info provider wherein you prepare the data accordingly, and then you wanted to do the reporting overall globally. Okay, so then what you are going to do, the set of attributes and KPIs are same here. You wanted to do the union, correct? Sales
Yeah.
happening at one region, sales happening at another region. Ultimately, as you are going to create one report which is going to have the overall sales or the data which is being presented globally, not specific to a region, correct? So in that case, there is one more type of info provider which will either support union or join. That we'll be seeing in future what are those subjects, but union is possible or join is possible. Clear? And then on top of final provider, you can do the BEX report. Or else if you want a separate BEX report on the region specific report also, because if you're running in if you're running your business in Asia, obviously there will be a country head who is interested in seeing the data related to Asia, right? But as a CEO, you wanted entire company's info. But as a region head of Asia, you will be interested in Asia predominantly, correct? So you can also create a BIX report on top of this region info provider also. Clear? If you want only the
Yeah, got
information
it.
pertaining to the data present in this provider, and as a technical consultant, you will be creating a BEX report and giving to the reporting consultant or end user so that they will be running the report. So there will be different types of reports based on the need. Either the modeling and all, obviously it's a technical team's decision, right? If the data is readily available, they are going to create a BEX report on top of that. If the data is spread across multiple tables, they are going to join the data or union the data. Clear?
Yeah.
Once the data is
So
readily
mostly,
available, yeah, go ahead, please.
the info provider is always a model, right?
Yes, everything is modeling. We have to build everything, all these things.
No, it cannot be a single table. If you call
It
it
can be
info
single table
provider,
also because
okay.
info provider also, it is something like in BW terms, it has its own advantages, aggregation of the data or storing the data detail level. But ultimately, you'll be creating that object, correct? So again, this info provider will be associated with one table because it has to physically store the data, correct? Any other
Right.
doubts, guys?
And last question, the extractor and data source is just a structure.
It's just an
Is
object.
it?
It's an object. It will have the information, what is the source of data, and what are the columns which you are getting from that source. Assume that your table might
Oh,
have 20 fields, but you might need only 10 fields, correct?
okay.
For your reporting purpose or extraction purpose. So in my extractor, again, extractor can be created programmatically or also directly based on table or view. That we'll see in detail when we come to that. But as of now, you can just think in a layman terms. Don't try to go in detail with respect to technicality, but try to understand what exactly is extractor. Extractor is something which is going to give what is the source of data, like whether it can be table or view or anything, and what are different fields to be part of that. So you will just replicate, and you can also test also. To test that, there is a mechanism given in source system. Also, you have to pull data from here to here, right? There is some additional object which you have to create. As of now, we have done the modeling, correct? To pull the data from here to here, you have to create something called info package and trigger it. To push data from here to here, you have to create something called DTP, data transfer pack process. Then you have to push data from here to here. That we will see. Data loading part, it will come into picture. Okay. Ultimately,
Right.
data is here. We have to push it all the way till here. Correct. So for that only, we as a BW consultant will do the modeling and we'll also create a process chain and stuff like that. That we will understand in detail in coming session. Go ahead, go ahead. I guess one of you had it out. So any other doubts, guys, here?
No, very good.
Yeah.
And again, in this, it is not necessary that you have to create everything from the scratch, correct? Since SAP, before coming with any product or before coming with anybody, any product company with their own product, they will do the market research, right? That's the reason, even if you take ECC system, they have different module, right? You have something called a MM consultant, PP consultant, SAP ABAP consultant, basis consultant, some functional consultant like FICO, FI, CO consultant, HR consultant, correct? So SAP has delivered their own standard modules, okay, standard transaction codes. So which is used to post your transactions, right? To create a purchase order. There's a standard transaction given by SAP. That data will go and sit in some application tables in ECC, okay? Like how SAP has designed their ECC system, the standard operation predominantly done by the most of the business in the world, obviously they can do their own customization, correct? Like that when the SAP come up with BW, they also given a standard object, all these data source, info provider, reports, everything they have given standard. If you want to make use of the standard, you have to go with standard object. And I believe one of you guys asked a question like BA content. Are we going to see BA content? Those are the object will be present in BI content, which are nothing but standard objects given by SAP. If you want to reuse, you can just consume those by activating those objects. We'll see that also in the coming session. Okay. The high level like SAP has given a standard objects with respect to BW, we can consume that, or else you can create your own custom objects also. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Great. So now let us try to see the overview of SAP BW system itself, okay? Because since you guys are from NANA, ECC or BW area, let us see that. And in order to log into your system, all you have to do is just have to enter the IP address and the credential which I will be sharing, and click on connect. So you don't have to install anything. You just have to open remote desktop connection application in your desktop or your tablet or a mobile phone also you can install. Enter the IP address and credential. It will take you there. And here, this is something called logon pad. Okay, you might have already seen. This is something called SAP logon pad. This icon, you have to double click on that, and wherein you will be able to see the systems. But if you are joining to a project newly, obviously this will be blank. You have to create a new system connection by clicking on this button. Okay. It is just that you are adding a properties, logon properties. See here you can enter the description, server name, instance number, system ID. This will be given by the basis team or your team members who are already working on that project. You just have to enter that. Clear? It's just that application server would be IP address or a URL. Instance number is that SAP instance number. System ID would be something like BW, MW, and all those things, something like that. And existing system also you can see the property by right clicking and using the property. Here the server is this one and instance they are using this. Clear, guys?
So, when we join this SAP BW system, we are supposed to ask this credentials from someone, or they
Oh, they
give.
will give actually. They will give because you have to work
Just
on the
give.
system,
Okay.
right? So again, since
Right.
I don't know whether I have those things, important T codes we have. Let me create one more slider for you guys. Here, see generally what happens, even in your case also, as a BO consultant, you have your development box connected to BW development, quality connected to BW quality, right? You have ECC dev, you have BW dev, ECC, you can call it as maybe development DW1 or DC1, and you might have your MDW1. Landscape, they call it as landscape, right? You already aware, right? What is landscape? DC1, DW1, and on top of this, your BO is connected, correct? BO dev. So like this, you might have different landscape. What is landscape? Landscape is like the system path in your uh, client, what you are working on. This would be your ECC, this would be your BW, this would be your BO. So this is development environment. Similarly, you have QoS and similarly you can have your pre-prod, and similarly you can have prod. The number of system in the landscape depends on client to client and how better they wanted to handle it. Clear? And the name can be different. This is development, this is quality, this is pre-prod, this is prod. Some people may not have pre-prod also. They might have only development, quality, and prod. So they will be doing UAT and integration testing here only. Unit testing they will do it here. Clear? You guys understood what exactly they call it as uh, the landscape. Typically, we call landscape in any project. This would be the landscape generally. Clear, guys? Any doubts in this? Ultimately, whatever the production which you do, obviously you won't be doing direct changes in BO prod, right? You'll be doing in BO development, you'll create a Webby report and then you'll move here, then you'll move your changes here or promote your objects. Correct? Any doubts in this, guys? The landscape part.
No, no, no.
So, and each and every system, whether it's a ECC or BW, it will have separate system connection. Like you have to add it separately in log pad. Okay. Like for
So
developing,
SAP Logger is just an interface showing the system nodes. Is it like that?
it is just a point or property we are adding here so that you can log into respective system. Here might have only development system, right? You might have quality, you might have pre-prod, you might have prod, correct? You need to add four
Mhm.
system so that you can log into respective system.
And the ECC, so ECC is also the same. We enter into ECC through SAP Logger.
Yes, through SAP logger
So
only.
okay, so,
So it
so
is just a
BW
like
is installed.
how you go and log into your BO portal using your the generally either you will have desktop application for Webby or else you will go and open in your portal, right? Or in a browser. Whereas here you will be doing that
Mhm.
through SAP login pad.
So for BW, the client tool, you can say it as SAP Logger. Is it like that?
Yes, this is the client tool.
Client tool.
This is the client tool for SAP in
Oh.
general, not only for BW, ECC, BW, CRM, SRM. This is the SAP
Mhm.
login pad, which is a client tool which you will use to connect to SAP.
Okay.
Because you need to have a user credentials created in your system and you need to have system details configured in your SAP login pad, then only you can log in. Clear?
Mhm.
So now
Okay.
I configure my login pad
When,
and double click.
when just
Go
yeah,
ahead, go ahead,
just
please.
one thing I wanted to ask that as you said, we have this landscape of dev, UAT, and QA. So we'll be creating all the connections here in the launchpad itself, or we will go to
We'll
different
just enter the
ecosystem and
details. That's it. We
there,
don't create a connection. We just already the
yeah,
system is configured, right? We just need that property and add the property.
yeah,
And when you double click on it,
mhm.
it will give you a prompt wherein you have to enter your personal user ID and password.
Right, right. So for QA, I just need to enter the detail here and create a connection for QA and
Correct.
prod,
Only
right?
one time, that's
Right.
it.
Okay.
After that, it will be
Okay.
there in
So
your logon pad. You'll come here and
okay.
you double click on this. It will give you a prompt wherein you enter your user ID password
And then,
and it will let you
mhm.
log in. There are cases where people have implemented SSO also, single sign-on. So in that case, you
Mhm.
don't have to enter credential. This screen won't come directly. It will take you to the initial screen of SAP.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. And if you see the
So
client
so
is,
for dev,
go ahead, please. Go ahead,
so just
Sanjay.
so for dev, QA and UAT.
Yeah, you
Yeah, yeah.
have to enter
So for
separate
that,
credentials here.
QA and UAT,
Your voice is
dev,
breaking, Sanjay.
QA, and that's it. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
So you have to create separate connection. If you have dev,
I need to
quality and
create single
pre-prod, you
one.
have to create separate connection for dev, separate connection for
Yeah, yeah.
quality.
I'm saying in real time, we just have to, go to one remote machine and then, create a connection and start work.
That's it. It depends actually. Either they may give remote connection or else if you are getting a client laptop itself, you just log into VPN and configure in your local logon pad in your local laptop. It's just a client software. how you work, either you log into remote if they are going with that approach,
Understood.
or
Yeah.
else you configure the same software will be there in your laptop. You just have to create a connection and start working on it. That's it. Clear? Now, when you double click, it will ask you if it is a single sign-on, it will directly log in. Otherwise, it will ask. Okay. And every SAP can have multiple clients. Okay. When they install an hardware, right, at software level, they can create multiple client. Like client is like a confined box. Like you can have multiple clients in DC1 only. For example, in ECC is one of the development system, right? In ECC only, you can have client 100, client 200. Okay. Client 100 they can use for some purpose, client 200 they can use for some purpose. Clear? So clients are like a, it is holding data separately with respect to that logon session.
Okay, so once we have logged in with one client and whatever
We
the,
cannot see the data of other client.
yeah,
It is
that's
like
what
a
I'm
separate
asking.
system. At software
Okay,
level,
got
you
it.
are managing. The hardware is
Okay.
same, but software level, you are just managing to have to work as different thing. That's it. So assume that you have a SE and ECC system. Okay, ECC system. You can have a client with 100 and client with the 200 also. 200. You can also have as many client, but generally they won't simply create. There will be some need, correct, to have multiple client.
But
So
one project has one client, no?
no, it depends on the landscape which you are working on. Either they can have only one client only, they can have multiple. Why they have separate client with the same system, I will tell you. Okay. So there is a client 100, there is a client 200 in the ECC development system only. Okay. Assume that this is dev.
Mm-hmm.
In development, they have client 100 which they are using only for development purpose. Okay.
Mm.
And they don't have any data. More majority of the tables is not having any data field here. Okay.
Okay.
And they have some money constraint maybe, or else they have created a client 200. Here the functional consultants are executing the transaction and posting the transactional data. Got it? So they
Okay.
wanted to use client 100 only for the development, but all these objects will be visible here also. You have to log in with
Mm.
client 200 so that you can run and test the report or a program or object what you have created. Clear? Here you will
Okay.
not have developer access. Assume that they will give only developer access here.
And the other one is for just for execution.
Execution and testing.
Okay.
Clear? You can have something
Yeah.
like that, but if they have good money or if they don't want to configure something like that, they will have only one system and they will have post the transaction everything here only, and they can move once the testing unit testing is done, then they can move to quality also. But here
Yeah.
we are trying to learn the different client concept. Okay, is it
Mm-hmm.
mandated to have the multiple client? No, it depends. If they really want to have it to test something, they can do that. Otherwise, they don't have it. Clear? Each client you think as separate system only. But SAP will give additional flexibility for an basis people to configure multiple clients so that you can treat that as a separate system and try to work on something based on your need, if at all it really needs.
Can we have these clients as a separate like dev
Yes,
and quality?
that's what people will do. Wherever
Okay.
people don't have enough money to have separate hardware and all, they will have a
Hmm.
single box with multiple client. Here you treat that as a development, and you can also have limited set of transaction executed and limited data. Whereas in client 200, you might have more data, wherein this they are treating as quality. They do the changes here. They will come and log in with this and treat this as a quality box and run the test cases. If they find any issue, they will go back here and do the changes, and they will have the same object reflected immediately, and they will redo the testing. They can.
Okay. Okay.
There are still projects they are doing. It is not that everybody will have separate box. Okay. So you guys are clear with the client concept? That's
Yes.
what this client is about. Okay. By default, automatically it will populate whatever the client it is configured, and your ID has to be created in the system. Okay. Without your
Really,
ID
one
created in the
thing,
system, you cannot log in.
really one thing regarding the client that are there any say SAP SAP has their SAP has their own predefined what to say because I mean from one of my friend I heard that they reserve something for SAP. There is something which users can only use. Is there a range which says that okay, this is specific for SAP and you cannot use it, and then
No,
there
no,
is a
no,
number
not
which
like
you
that.
can.
They can configure. This is completely depend on the base system. While they try to configure, right,
Okay,
they will create. They have. It's just a three-letter field. You can enter anything, configure with anything. Generally, what they would, right, development, whatever the client they use, right, they will try to use the same thing for quality pre-prod and prod because they have to do many more configuration also, right? It's not only this. On the back end, there will be a lot of other configuration. So, for
no, no.
example,
What I'm asking is, what I'm asking is like
there is no
for
specific
client like you.
client number. It depends,
Okay,
vary from project to project.
okay. It can be alphanumeric also.
No, no, no. It is just a three-character number. It
Okay,
cannot be alphanumeric.
and is
It is a numeric.
okay. It
It's
has
just
to
a
be numeric
three-digit
only,
number.
but okay, but there's nothing which is like SAP. SAP
One
has
A, B, C,
reserved
and all won't be
for.
there.
Okay. But there's nothing like SAP reserve it
Nothing,
for
nothing,
themselves
nothing,
that
nothing,
okay,
nothing.
0 to 100 you cannot use and then
Nothing,
100 to
nothing
200
like
you
that.
can use.
And you don't have to worry, okay?
Okay,
So wherever
okay,
there are cases, if there is something which I tell you, if there is some exception, because this is of not point of what is that interest for us. Because
concern.
if they
Okay,
have 1 2 3, they will
okay,
tell us 1 2 3 is the client. If they have 2 3 4, they will tell this is the 2 3 4. Generally, they will go with 100, 200, 300, or 000. They generally won't
right.
go with
Right.
111, 222, 333, all those things. It will be one
Okay.
followed by zeros, two followed by zeros, or something like that.
Actually, why I asked this because one of my friend told me that in interview they asked him that what is your client number and all, and he says from that they can easily know
No, no,
whether
no,
you
no, no, no,
really
no.
worked or not because they
Nothing,
say what
nothing
is your
like that.
ECC
Nothing like
client
that.
number and what is your BW number.
You can say any number, okay? You can say 100,
Okay,
200, 300, 400. Okay, it won't be in
okay,
ABC and all. Okay.
okay, sure,
Generally,
sure,
they want to
sure.
create
So
one,
like,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all those continuous number and all. Generally, it ends with
okay,
zero. Like you can have 100, 110, 120, 130 in the same system, correct?
So these client numbers are created by basis script, right?
Everything will be done by basis. And again,
Okay.
if you see, when I double click on the system, it automatically populated some default client, correct? Whichever the client which they have. If they have only one, by default, it will populate that one. If they have two also, it will populate something as a default, which is configured by basis. If you want to manually change it, you can change it. Clear?
sure, man, sure.
And again, there are cases where they will also, here, whatever you are seeing the as a information, right? This is again configured or entered by the base system. In there, also some custom transaction code is there, standard T code. They can set here, they can say like client 800 is development, client 810 is pre-prod, client 840 is prod, something like that. Got it? As an additional information to the user,
Sure.
they can configure the message. Or else if there is going to be a system down after tomorrow onwards, they can set a message also. Mostly if there is any multiple client, they will generally add that information here in the respective box. And there are cases where
Thank you.
generally what happens, right? There is something called periodic refresh, okay? Because to do the testing in quality, I might not have enough data, right? Generally, what they do, they will refresh the prod data to the respective table of quality occasionally, 3 months once or 6 months once, so that you will have data in quality similar to almost matching with the prod, so that you can do more and more testing on the huge amount of data, correct? That process they call it as refreshing the data. So you don't have to typically create from the scratch. You can refresh. The periodic refresh, what happen? All those application table holding the transactional or master data, table of these will be copied to table of quality system. The data. Clear?
Yes, yes.
So any other doubts, guys, apart from what we have discussed so far?
No, no.
Great. So any kind of question you guys ask me because it is new for you guys, right? Obviously, there are cases where I have to take some other deviation to explain the stuffs. But as I said, it is mandatory for you guys to have your ID created, otherwise you cannot log in. So once you log in, this is the main screen what you are able to see. Okay. Once you log into the system, this is the SAP typical screen. Once you log into your SAP screen, here you see the
So
favorites are the commonly executed option, and there is nothing over here predominantly. Okay. And if you see in the below bottom right hand corner, you can see the property. You can hide or unhide or expand. Okay, by clicking on this arrow, and you can here you see if you click on that, you can see what is the system ID. EHP is the system ID, and client is 800. Okay, and who is the current user who has logged in, and what is the current program, what is the transaction, what is the response time, all these things. Anyhow, all these are not interested. Only this thing. In whichever the T code you are, if you go and see here, you will see what is the current T code which you are in. Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I guess in a
so there is no other interface we log on for SAP ECC or SAP BW.
it is
Everything
like
is
your C
entered through.
programming. While learning C programming, you will log into C programming development tool, right? For Java,
Mhm.
either you will log into Eclipse. For your this thing, ICICI mobile application, you think about. To log into ICICI account, you will log into ICICI app only, right? You'll click on that icon only. For Kotak
Mhm.
Mahindra, you log into their application or you'll click on that icon. Similarly, for SAP, to log into this, you will use SAP Logon Pad. Very simple. And now with BW on HANA or HANA, you will can also log into the system using HANA Studio. These are the only two ways you can log into the system.
So modeling is all done in the studio, not here, right?
It depends whether you are doing the conventional object because HANA comes in a recent days, right? Before HANA also we were doing the modeling or we are creating an ABAP reports, right? The people, the core ABAPers.
Okay. Okay.
Clear?
Got it.
So there is also a video I believe in my channel. I will share the link. You guys can go through that. It explain what is the role. Maybe I can high level tell you. See, we are BW consultant, right? See, ultimately there are some set of roles defined by SAP, or based on that you get a job. Very simple, correct? So to install SAP as a system, as a software, like how you are going to install Windows on your laptop or desktop, mm, there needs some expertise to install SAP system itself, correct? And configure it and maintain some setting. That is done by SAP base system. Okay. And in that system, once you configure, you have to maintain some security roles and authorization related stuff. They have to create a user and assign some authorization to that. That is done by SAP security team. Basis is the person who will install and manage the software, but authorization related object will be done by SAP security team. For that, you need to have separate knowledge related to that. It's a altogether different team. We don't have to worry. They do their job like how we do our job, like modeling. They do their job on creation of a user, authorization, maintenance, creation of a role, and assigning to the user and all. Clear? Those is security. And this is something called technical. Even SAP security is a technical consultant role. SAP basis is a technical guy because they are going to do technical work, right? And SAP ABAP, there is something called SAP ABAP. Entire SAP system is predominantly created using ABAP programming language. Okay, so if there is some customization need to be done in a standard object, or if there is any custom object to be created from the scratch, then what you will do, you will be creating a custom object that will be done by core ABAPer. Clear? That is a ABAP job. Again, he has its own different object to be created, different object to be modeled, that they will take care. Similarly, there is something called BW system comes into picture. To do the modeling in a BW or work in a BW system, obviously they need to have a knowledge on BW. They will be called as a BW consultant. Along with that, you have something called a functional consultant because people has to configure or maintain some settings for the company code, the master data, how system has to behave, what kind of approval need to be happened, all those things. For that, again, a single person cannot be expert in each and every area, because if you take an MBA degree, MBA has finance separate expertise. You have sales and distribution separate thing, plant maintenance separate thing, correct? Like that, they have created a separate module, and people will have respective functional knowledge or expertise, so that they can configure in the system and they will do stuff for us guys. Those are different roles, functional roles. And now HANA comes into picture. Now there are additional roles opened in a technical HANA native HANA development consultant, again HANA security, HANA basis, HANA related ABAP consultant. These are the different roles. So it is not necessary that everybody need to know everything. It is not at all possible. So that's the reason you can know the things related to your area, like how BO. As a BO consultant, you need to know only BO, right? They can't expect you to know even installation of SAP from the scratch. If somebody is saying, they are just bluffing you, because it is not our job in a productive environment, right? Or in any project. So clear, guys, with respect to different rules, what we have.
Yes, Venu.
So when what I understand is like function consultant, they enter the data into the system, and we are working on that data.
Yes, correct. We will not create the data predominantly. The data will be already available. Either that will be created by functional consultant for the testing purpose, but in the production, obviously functional consultant won't create any data. If there is any configuration table to be maintained and configuration data to be maintained, they will maintain. But functional consultant won't go to Amazon website and start purchasing daily, right? The end
Yeah,
user will create a data,
right.
correct? Fun- Functional consultant will manage. If there somebody enter the data, how it has to go and post. Because SAP has given set of standard programs or transaction, so
Mhm.
that will work its job, that will do its job. But if you are creating a entry from a India region, the country has to be populated, our company code has to be populated as IN01. How can we configure that? All those things which we have to manage. A functional consultant will manage while configuring the system.
So like
Clear?
how to actually, I'm confused with the basis team, work, and the function consultant work.
See, basis will
It
install
means
the software. It is like you purchase a different components from these people, right? The hardware shop, hard disk, motherboard, RAM, all those things. After that, you have to install Windows software on
right,
that. So the installation of Windows software,
right.
in our case, SAP software will be done by basis. Or installing a patches to the operating system, all those things will be done by them. Or connecting a EC system to BW, BW to ECC will be done by them. Because that is the prerequisite for you to create a data source and bring the data from ECC to BW. You need a connection, correct?
Mm.
That part you won't
Mm.
have authorization as a BW consultant. It is their job, BC's job. They will do it. The functional is
Mm.
you can create a PO in the system. You can create a timesheet in a SAP system, correct? There is a module called HR. There it will let you to create timesheets, or else you can book your hours. You can book your
Mm.
leaves, correct? SAP has different modules.
Mm.
So see why SAP
Mm.
is such a used by majority of the company compared to Oracle is if you take an SAP, you have system starting from that system will give you end-to-end functionality required by any of the enterprise. See, SAP is the software used to manage the company. Okay. For example, SAP, you have a module called HR that supposed employee hiring till firing. Okay. Employee is being hired and you will be allocated to some project, and once he allocated to some project, you'll also book their daily hours, right? And they can apply his leave and they can process their salary, everything. There are modules and it is a predefined thing. So what HR functional consultant will do, based on that company's requirement, he will configure the system. Okay, there will be a leaves of 20 days per year, and these are the different days where the leaves are there, all those things. Clear? Like that, each and every module will have some custom configuration needs to be done. That's where the different, like HR is the one example which I told, on purchase order, invoice, all those things, there will be different area, procurement will be different area. For example, employee is joined. For him, there has to be laptop needed. Laptop has to be purchased from the vendor. So SAP also has built in their own integrated module like sales and distribution, procurement, all those things, right? So it is everything is tightly integrated. Single box, multiple tables are present, and all those tables are configured using this tightly integrated environment. That's where SAP is so famous because you don't have to have like Salesforce to manage your the customer data. If you want, you can manage using Salesforce, but SAP has their own module, correct?
Mhm. So, so not now, but do in going forward, do we need to have some understanding of the functional knowledge as well, or we
Functional,
can,
what I recommend, right? You just try to read in Google because ultimately it's about the process. Okay, functional, like in
Mhm.
general, in layman's terms. See, first you will go and create something in the system, correct? HR. What you as an employee is doing, that's what will be the knowledge required to manage an employee, correct? Employee can have its manager,
Mhm.
correct? Obviously,
Right.
there will be a table which will be holding the info. People won't ask what is the table and all, okay? But if you know some
Mhm. Mhm.
process, you can say like this is the model which I predominantly worked on, correct?
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Okay.
if you have that level of information, that is always well and good. Understood?
Yeah.
Got it.
So what I recommend, right, in your spare time, you just go ahead and try to read something related to different modules of the SAP, okay, functional modules. You don't have to be expert. You try to understand high level picture of that, okay. Even if you ask me, do you know in and out of all the module? No, I don't know. Because whenever I start working on a particular model, I will try to understand from a functional consultant, correct? The process, which T code they will go, how they enter, how they create an employee, or how they create a purchase order. If they create a purchase order, obviously that data has to ultimately go and sit in some tables, correct? Then I will try to dig in detail. But obviously, if you're showcasing, if you're going to an interview, they will ask, have you worked on any specific model? In that case, if you're comfortable with one or two areas, you can say like, yes, I worked on this particular area and these are the different table associated with it. That's it. If you become very much expert in those modules, it is well and good. But it need not, it is not a mandatory stuff. If you know, it is good because you are a techno-functional consultant. Correct?
So I mean, not now, but once we will be in middle of somewhere. Will you help us
See, functional
understand any?
knowledge, I cannot tell because I am not a functional guy, correct? But what is needed
No,
for a
not
technical
entire
guy,
function.
for example, I
Yeah,
will be
not in,
telling you some T codes because if I say customer master data, obviously the T code there will be some T code which will be used by functional consultant to go and manage the data,
Mhm.
right? Those things we will be saying,
Right.
okay.
Right.
But obviously, just my recommendation is like just go through simple overview. You don't have to go in detail, okay? Because for us as a BW consultant, it doesn't matter which area which we are working on. Just show us the
Mhm.
table and tell us the relationship. We will build the model and give it to you. Correct? And it is
Mhm.
not necessary that you have to know each and every module or you have to work on that. In
Mhm.
interview, they may say like the people who don't know how to design the JD, right? They say like
Mhm.
experience on particular model is added advantage. For us, data source
Mhm.
is a data source, correct? So
Mhm. Correct.
if it is a FI module or SD module, it doesn't matter. But if you have already worked on, you will be knowing on the different terminology or columns. That's it. Or which table you have to go
Mhm.
and cross-validate the data. But it is not the mandatory. If you have some knowledge, it's always good. Okay.
Mhm.
And we will also see how to find out the tables and all. Just if you Google it, you will get it. By with your experience, obviously you know how to Google it, right? You need to know how to Google it. Like if you know that, obviously finding out a table or anything is not that difficult. But we'll see how to find out the table, or even if you don't know anything, and how to try to cross-validate the data or find the columns. Again, it's all about research. See, if everything is ready-madely available in a particular table or something like that, then they don't need us and pay such a big packages and all, right? So we as a technical consultant has to go and research in the system. It takes some time, and then we have to build the model. It takes some time. Then we have to build a report. So everything involves time, correct? So that's the reason. Basis obviously, though we say like installing the system software and all, to configure they will have their own limitation. They have to go through standard SAP documentation. They might stuck somewhere. They have to do the research and all. Like that, even we as a BW consultant, see for us it is very simple. Already data is there. We need to find out the relationship between different tables and how to merge the data. All those things. That's it. If you are good in that, you're can become a very good professional expert. Clear, guys? Don't worry, this is just a first session. Obviously, you might have some idea now.
Yes.
In the next session onwards, we'll start saving different objects and different T codes. There is something called different T codes, okay? Maybe we'll finish that and mm, see in SAP, everything is T code, okay? Like in your application, when you open and layman terms, when you open your banking application, if you want to see the accounting summary, you will click on that option, right? Account summary might be there, or fund transfer, there will be a button or an icon, you will click on that, correct? Here, here in SAP, if you see the GUI, there is nothing, okay? It's a blank screen, correct? Everything, just a second. To execute something, there is something called a transaction code, okay? Every option will be associated with a transaction code. So these transaction code will be different for different consultant, functional consultant or different functionality. Clear? So, for example, to create a ABAP program, there is a T code called SC38. That number you have to come and enter here. If you enter, it will take you to that T code. Okay. This is where ABAP core ABAPer will build a report. Assume that you wanted to see the content of a table. There's a T code called SC18. Sorry, SC16. We'll discuss on commonly used T codes in the next session, and we'll see what is the T code, how to open new session by clicking on this button, how many maximum parallel session you can open. See, I can open up to 5 or 6 parallel session in the same system so that you can work on multiple objects or multiple program or multiple functionality in each of those windows. Okay, I can see in one T code the table of a table content, and I can also see or design your object. For example, you are creating a DSO or you are building a model in one screen, you are referring some table content in another screen. Parallelly, I can do that. Okay, so just remember what is the T code. T code is something which is already tagged to some specific functionality. Clear, guys?
Yes.
And
Yes.
again, you
Yeah.
need to know the commonly used T code. You don't have to know all the T code given by SAP, but commonly used, for example, you wanted to validate some data, correct? That T code you need to be aware. You are going to reconcile the table data with respect to some the transaction used by the business user to post the data, correct? So we will have to know those T codes. We'll see, and even to see the user info itself, there's a T code. We'll see all those commonly used T code, and then specific to the what kind of project you are working on or the module which you are working on, a module will have its own set of T code. Clear? So we'll slowly learn
Yeah.
each of the T code. You don't have to hurry, or else you can just see commonly used T codes in SAP. You will get the
I worked on ME23N, like
yeah,
seeing a
ME23
purchase
is
order.
used to see the purchase order, correct? Like that,
Yeah,
there will
those
be a T
details.
code to see the invoice, there will be a T code to see the user details. For anything in SAP, there will be a T code associated, okay? So you just have to run the T code. You want to create a data source, there is a T code. To create a table, there is a T code. You have to go to that T code, which is nothing but it will let you to perform some functionality. That's it. T code is just like a entry point to the functionality, okay? And that can be entered over here in this window. Or you can also traverse through this. If you see SAP menu, If you don't want to do that, you can just go and to the respective path and see, either you can enter FB02 or else you can drill all the way down and double click on this. It will open FB02 transaction code to see the document information. Clear? Master data, for
Yeah.
example, FK01, all these things, create block. Like that, module wise, the folder has been splitted. Okay, so either go with this or else the T codes are the shortcuts. Generally, everybody will T code because nobody will have. Because if I am working on some module, obviously I know what are the set of T code which will be used, right? You just enter, it will directly take there instead of you expanding all these things and work on the respective items, correct? So, and in order to log off, either if you ask me, see, log off also, I'm just checking where is the option like, okay. Generally, what we do in the initial screen, you click on exit. If that is the last session, it will ask you to log off. See, if this is the only screen in the current logon, because I can create as many 4 or 5 based on the system configuration, right? Uh, if you click on close, it will automatically log off. Okay, we'll see a couple of other basics which is really needed to traverse you through the system starting next session. Okay, so hope everything is clear whatever we have discussed, but still if you have any doubts, feel free to ask me in the next session. Okay,
Sure. Also share
that's all with respect to today's session. Thank you so much and have a good one.